Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Brian Henning. I'm the professor of philosophy and professor and chair of environmental studies here at Gonzaga University, and we're very happy to have you with us here tonight. Before we get started, just a bit about our digital platform, Zoom. In case you are not as familiar with it, to avoid disruptions, your microphone has been muted. After the talk, you'll be able to ask questions during the Q&A. I'll explain that more when we get to that portion. Note that at the top right-hand corner of your screen in the Zoom window, you should be able to change the orientation of your screen between 3 different views. I encourage you during the talk to pick the view that you like best to orient yourself to that window and the speaker. Finally, please note that also that this event is being recorded and it will be posted to our website. I'm posting that link to that in the chat. It should be available in a week or two if you wanted to watch this lecture again or to share it with someone else. You can be encouraged to do that. Access it through our website at gonzaga.edu/ENVS events. Tonight's event, the Unlikely Thru-Hiker, is co-sponsored by the Gonzaga Environmental Studies Department, Friends of Scotchman Peaks Wilderness, the Lands Council, and the Washington Trails Association. And now I would like to invite Phil Ho to take himself off mute and introduce tonight's speaker. Phil is the executive director of the Friends of Scotchman Peak Wilderness. He's a founding board member of the Idaho Trails Association and now serves on their advisory board. He's a past president of the American Long Distance Hikers West Association. Please join me in welcoming Phil Ho.
Okay, I don't see myself on the screen, but I'm off mute. Is it working?
You look good to me.
Okay, great. Well, it's my pleasure tonight to be here. Thank you, Brian, for having us and for sponsoring this event. It's one I've been really looking forward to for about a year since I first met Derick. I'm a long distance hiker myself, and as such, I'm always interested in other hikers' stories. And so it gives me great pleasure to bring Derick tonight to talk about his book, The Unlikely Thru-Hiker. I, again, had the opportunity to hear him speak in person at a conference about a year ago, a wilderness conference. Immediately picked up a copy of the book and started reading through it. And the common experiences that all thru-hikers share were in that book. It made me feel like I was right there, part of the trail. And this is one of the talents that Derick brings with his storytelling and writing. It has a real touch of that authentic feel. It also brought out his very real and personal story, his vulnerabilities, his own personal triumphs and tribulations. And those are the things too that make for a compelling book, offering that insight into perspectives that we don't have otherwise. So these things combine to make this book just a pleasure to read. A little bit about Derick before we start tonight. He was born in Brooklyn, raised in New York City. He's an urbanite, self-described. And before setting out on the Appalachian Trail in 2012, he had never hiked or camped a day in his life, which makes it really unlikely he'd be out there, doesn't it? In the spring of 2012, he hopped a train to Georgia and then got a taxi at the station, told the cab driver to drop him off at the trailhead for the Appalachian Trail. And then Derick did what he always does. He put one foot in front of the other and he just moved forward north. Tonight, he's going to share the rest of the story. Derick?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. In the West Coast about the piece, hopefully you know a little. I'm going to share a little bit about my book, The Unlikely Thru-Hiker, and why I became the Unlikely Thru-Hiker. So let's start. I'm from, like Phil said, I am from New York City. This was my wilderness. These were my markings. And this was how I got around. And of course, this was the wilderness. That's all I knew. I knew New York City, knew nothing about the outdoors, about hiking. Again, from New York, all we know is, go to Central Park or Yankee Stadium or Coney Island. But hiking in the woods was not something that we grew up wanting to do. This was my life. So you may be thinking, how did I find out about the Appalachian Trail? Where I'm also a big reader. And a friend of mine handed me a book and he said, read this. It's funny and I think you'll dig it. And I said, oh, I like to laugh. I like funny. So I grabbed it started reading it. And yes, it was a humorous read, A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson, one of the funniest books I've ever read. But the one thing that really stuck out was this trail that not many people get to complete. And I thought, wow, that would be an amazing thing to accomplish. And I'm all about challenges. So it stuck in the back of my mind. It was almost like a pipe dream where, yeah, I'll travel around the world, you know, run a marathon, hike the Appalachian Trail, but I never really thought about it until I actually got an opportunity. I had the time and saved enough money. And I said, you know what? Let me just do it. And I started sharing it with my family and friends. And the reaction that I was getting from them, well, before I started sharing it with them, the only thing besides the book, what the book shared with me, the only thing I knew was that it was a trail that went from Georgia to Maine. That's it. I didn't even know if I liked hiking. I've never camped out, never pitched a tent. I've never done anything like that. First time I did it was when I had decided to hike the AT and I was hiking towards Springer Mountain. And that's all I knew. But I still wanted to do it. And I started sharing it with my friends, and the reactions I was getting from my friends were, that's one of the reactions. And what I want to do is read a little part of my book, The Unlikely Thru-Hiker. And it's one of the, it's one of the first chapters. And it's the response that I was getting from my friend here, Nina, when I told her that I was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. I wait for her response as she scrunches her face, trying to make sense of what I just told her. Okay, why would you want to do that? She says, frowning. What? Because I can. Because I've never done anything like this before, I say. Is she messing with me? It's an adventure, something I've wanted to do for a while. You've never mentioned it before, she shoots back at me as if catching me in a lie. I'm sure I did. Look, that's not the point. I'm hike. What are you going to eat? Will you have self-service so you can order food? Do they deliver out there? She barrages me with questions, ignoring my efforts to explain. I will bring a cell for when I'm in town, resupplying, and if there's an emergency. I'll be on top of mountains, which I think will be outside of delivery and maybe self-service. I say, not truthfully knowing the answer. I don't know about this. How long will it take you? She asked, unable to grasp the thought of me doing something so out of character. I'm going to try to do it in 5 months, I say proudly. You're going to live in the mountains for 5 months, she repeats, squinting her eyes at me as if I were too far away for her to see. Before I can answer, she continues, listen, pretty boy, I know you. You are the most well-groomed metrosexual Black man in New York City. You in the woods without your mirror and your beauty products or your designer clothes, please. How will you shower? Wait, I don't have beauty products. Okay, maybe lotions. What about manicures? Okay, I get manicures once in a while. What about, okay, I get it. I say, wanting to finally get my point across before she convinces me I'm too meticulous about my appearance to live out in the woods. So that was one response I got from my friend. My friends thought I was too sick. Family thought I was crazy. My brother was like, hey, dude, you should take a machete with you. You can just, they come in small sizes. You can strap it to your chest, go. I'm like, dude, I can't take a machete with me. He's like, no, go ahead, man. You can do it. You'll be safe. I'm like that. There's a difference between a hiker in the woods and a dude with a machete. I'm not doing it. Worse yet, a dude. It took me a while to Photoshop that, by the way. So it didn't matter though. I had decided I was going to do this amazing hike and was hoping to get everyone's blessing. I kind of didn't, but I still wanted to go and do it. So I went to the first outfitter. Within a week and a half, I was out in this. But the first outfitter I went to was REI and Eastern Mountain Sports Store. I ran in there to get some help. First person I saw, I said, hey, I'm going to through hike the trail. Can you help me get some gear? And she turns around and she was like, oh, that's cool, but I don't work here. And I go, oh, I'm sorry. I was so excited that I just went to the first person. Finally found somebody that worked there. I said, hey, I want to through hike the AT. Can you help me get some gear? Luckily, the guy was a through hiker himself, so he knew exactly what I needed. The first thing he said was, what kind of pack do you like? What kind of gear do you like to wear? And I'm like, I don't know. I've never hiked before. And he said, you've never hiked before, and now you want to do a 2,200 mile trail. I said, yeah, why not? He's like, okay. So he got all my gear for me. As I walk out the door with all my gear, I look back and I could almost read his mind. He's like, this dude is going to hurt himself. Didn't believe I could do it. I didn't care. I wanted to do it. Week and a half, I was off. Got to Springer Mountain. And this is, once you get here, you get to Springer Mountain, which is the beginning of the Appalachian Trail. And I stopped and looked at, this was it, it was no turning back. And I had a little pain in my stomach. I stopped and I thought for a second, I have gear in this heavy backpack. It's a 40, which was way too heavy. For the next 5 to 6 months, and I don't know how to use any of it. Thought about it for a while, didn't have anywhere else to go, so I said, let's just walk through those arches and see what happens. So I started hiking, I got on, then it was time to actually start using my gear.
Hey, Derick.
So I unpacked my tent, but my tent kind of looked like this, together, and couldn't get the stakes in the ground. Another through hiker saw me, grabbed the rock in the ground, looked at me, tossed the rock, and just walked away. And I was like, dude, you are a genius. So I grabbed him. Yes.
Sorry, Derick.
Hello?
Sorry, this is Brian. I was just noticing that your audio and video are a bit garbled. Was wondering if you might try turning off your video for a minute and just do the PowerPoint, and that might let your Wi-Fi catch up a little bit.
Oh, yes, let's see. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. People, you can feel free to chat with me directly if you feel like, it's hard to know sometimes if it's you or if it's everybody. I think your Wi-Fi is a little bit spotty, Derick, but I think that might help for a little while. You can probably turn it on later, if that's okay.
Okay, should I backtrack a little bit?
Just a little bit, yeah. Maybe.
So you guys can hear me?
Yeah, I think so. Why don't you backtrack maybe a slide?
Cool. Okay, cool. All right, let's see. Wrong way. Oh, we're going too far. Okay, here we go. So I got to the approach trail and I had all this gear that I didn't know how out there. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had nowhere else to go. So I decided just to go for it. Once I got to Springer Mountain, it was time to use my gear. Not my tent, but it's kind of what my tent looked like. Took me a while to pitch my tent. Took a while for me to get my stakes in the ground. And as one guy came, another through hiker came with a rock. Can you guys see me? It says internet unstable. Can you still hear me? Are we good? Okay.
I think it's a little bit better.
So I grabbed, okay. So he grabbed the rock, tapped the stakes down in the ground, looked at me, tossed the rock, and just walked away. And I was like, this dude is a genius. So I grabbed the rock and I put it in my backpack, and no, I didn't grab the rock. But that day, I learned how to use my water pump, because I've never used it before, how to use my mini stove, and these are hikers just showing me and kind of me figuring everything out. Water filter, how to pitch my tent, how to hang a bear bag. That was the first day. Next day was time to hike. And I knew that I had to follow this this marking on the tree. They're called white blazes on the Appalachian Trail. And the rule is that if you're standing next to a tree on a rock or whatever, a log on the ground somewhere, you should be able to see the next marking. So I'm thinking, I can do this. Like, I can follow markings all the way up Blue Blaze. And I said, wait a minute, you're trying to, so didn't know what was going on. Found out that these are for side trails for the privy or to a shelter or a trailhead. So once I figured that out, I was like, okay, I'm going. First day I hiked by myself. I'm from New York. First time out in the woods. Everything spooked me, and it was broad daylight. I would hear like squirrels running. It sounded like a stampede of wild boars. I would like jump up. I would see logs and trees and stuff, and they looked like dragons. My mind was running wild that first day. But eventually, within a few days, that first day, there was a lot of hikers on the trail. Within 3 to 4 days, I ended up hiking with a group. And I call these guys the moving village because when you pitch your tent, it looks like a whole village of tents. And then you pack it up and you head out. So hence the moving village. So everyone here within a week had a trail name. And they said, dude, Derick, you don't have a trail name. Because people were trying to give me a bunch of different trail names. And trail names it's a name that you're given when you're on the trail, whether, if you're, what it's something you did or the way you look or act. And so they decided, I'm going to share a little bit about myself and they can figure out a trail name for me because the week was too long not to have a trail name. So I'm looking at this photo right here and I'm surprised that my trail name wasn't Captain Jack Sparrow. Like, look at this dude. I look just like the bandanas, all that. But I shared a little bit about myself and I said, well, I would joke around about wanting to stay clean on the trail and shaving at streams and wishing I had a full-length mirror I can pull out from my backpack and just like stay groomed. Because like my friend Nina said, I was kind of a metrosexual before I thru-hiked. So a hiker was like, dude, you're a Mr. Fabulous. And I said, dude, I can't go around calling myself Mr. Fabulous. Just imagine that. Like people ask me what my trail name is. And I'm like, I'm Mr. Fabulous. It just sounds weird. But he convinced me. He said, look, dude, just use it for a week. And it turns out that Mr. Fabulous was a guy, I think he was a trumpet player in the Blues Brothers movie. And he was like this suave dude that's, stayed fresh. And he was like, that's you. I'm like, we'll see. So for a while, I would use the trail name, but I would almost be apologizing when people would ask, because one of the thru-hikers, what's your trail name? Oh, well, they called me Mr. I didn't name myself, I swear, kind of like trying to be defensive about it. Because in my head, I'm thinking, they're going to say, hey, who are you to be calling me? But it was the total opposite. People were laughing and smiling and kind of wanted to hear the story about Mr. Fabulous. And it ended up being more than just about me. It was more of the story, which I love because I'm a storyteller. So, but the one day that I had decided, the moment that I decided I was going to keep that trail name was, I was already hiking with the trail name. And I was hiking by myself and I saw a group of older hikers going north. They were doing a day hike and asked me questions about my thru hike. And it was an older woman. She must be 150, 200. Like she was older than the AT. She had a cane. She came up to me. She heard that I was a thru hiker. And she asked me what my trail name was. And I said, ma'am, my trail name is, and without, she goes, oh my God, I've been waiting for Mr. Fabulous my entire life. She's up to me and brings my face down to hers and gives me a kiss on the cheek. And she kind of like storms off with like her cane, kind of almost twirling her cane, and her aide is like running after her. And I said, you know what? This is a feel-good name and I'm gonna stick with it. And that sealed the deal. So the trail name stuck. The lessons I learned along the way. I had a lot of going against me since I would hold on to like everything that people had to share with me and teach me along the way. And this hiker, first of all, this hiker, Birdman, but to me, he looks like a lawn gnome. Like the beard and the red, he looks like just one of those you just play. This guy was a sweet guy. When he first met me, he started taking pictures and he wanted to get to know me a little bit. And he shared a story with me that he had met a thru-hiker that hiked the year before. And he asked him, if there was one thing you could change, what would it be about your thru-hike? Or what would you do differently? And he said, well, I took a lot of pictures of mountains, scenery, trees, grass, dirt, flowers, plants. But the one thing I wish I didn't have to continue that conversation. I knew exactly what he meant. Because if you think about it, you take photos of the scenery and it's a beautiful scenery, but sometimes it doesn't capture your feeling, what you feel. But taking a picture of people, like I remember the conversation I had with this guy. I remember his smile that day as if it was yesterday. And this was 8 years ago. So I decided from that moment on, I wanted to take pictures of people that I met along the trail. Trail angels, which are people that give you trail magic, which are like if you need water or something like that, or need a ride into town, they give you snacks because as a thru-hiker, you're constantly burning calories and you're starving. You can't replace it, so we're just hungry. So when you give us food, it's like trail magic. Or ride into town for like a shower. My thing was always wanting to take a shower. So I would take pictures of trail angels, new hikers that I met. And to this day, when I see a photo, I remember the name, the conversation, that moment I had with them. And I thought it was the most amazing thing. Now, there's a lot of reasons why I was, one was that I'm from New York City and from the city and had no hiking experience at all. And if looking at this photo, I actually missed looking like this. But there's two things I can't do anymore. I can't go calling myself Mr. Fabulous New York City because my friend Nina is not having it, or any of my friends or family. And two, I can't look like this and go to Times Square and start juggling or something like that, try to earn some money. But with this look and the experience, and also one thing that's was brought to my attention, which I didn't realize going into this, was that I was the only Black person on the trail, which was something that I was sad about. I didn't believe it. So I would walk around and people, they weren't just saying, hey, you're Black. People were just coming up to me and saying, hey, man, we're really glad you're on the trail. Thanks for being out here. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you're out here. Thank you for being out here. Not really getting what they were saying until they were really forward about it, not being malicious, but being like just happy and that I was out there because I stuck out like a sore thumb. I mean, look at me. So once I found that out, I decided I'm going to look for, I'm going to try to see if there's another person of color. And I would see day hikers, and a lot of those day hikers was their first time ever hiking any trail or just being outside. And I get in my talks, one of the questions I get is, why do you think that's a thing? And again, going into this, not knowing it was something that was happening, because I think it's less than 1% of thru-hikers are, people of color or Latino. And I can tell you, I can't speak for the entire Black community, but I can speak for my family and my friends and people around me, how we grew up, and there's 3 reasons why I think you don't see a lot of Black people enjoying this amazing, not just hiking, just going out there, enjoying the outdoors. I think one is knowledge, not having there wasn't a book like the Unlikely Thru-Hiker that and also the Unlikely Thru-Hiker is kid friendly, so you can read it to your kids. There's no curses. There's like words that I made up, like son of a Brooklyn Bridge, but I wanted every person to be able to read it, even if it's to your child, because that was one of the things, is that I didn't have any kind of like resource, they weren't teaching me this in school. My parents weren't teaching me this. The second is financially, you couldn't really afford it. I spent a lot of money because I didn't have any of the gear just to get the gear I had. So it wasn't like we had a tent and any gear that was handed down from family member to family member. And then third is lore. When we think of the woods, we think of Jason, we think of bad things happen in the woods, especially in the South. I remember watching, the movie Deliverance. It's like, you don't go to the Appalachian Mountains because bad things happen. So there's those three factors that I would say caused me not to know anything about the AT. Luckily, I'm a lover of reading, of books, and I found out about it. And then when I came back from the trail, all my friends and family that knew nothing about it, all of a sudden were experts in the AT. And my brother himself was like, look, dude, if you survive, I can do this. So all of a sudden he wanted to do it. And we ended up doing an adventure from New York City, which I didn't realize it was a trail until after I thru-hiked. There's a trail from New York that can take you up to the Appalachian Trail, which once you learn, again, I didn't have any kind of experience with this. I didn't know how I was going to react when I got out there. My mindset was that this was a challenge and I wanted just to do it. But once I got out there, I realized it was more than just about hiking with a heavy pack on and going up and down mountains. It was about your surroundings and the people that were out there. Hikers that thru-hike became best friends because you have that, when you meet strangers, you need this icebreaker to, get to know the people. But we had that icebreaker where we were thru-hiking. We were all doing the same thing. And the one thing out there was no judgment. Didn't matter where you were from. I was hiking and hanging out with people that I probably wouldn't hang out with if I was just in New York. Although I'm a people person, but my lifestyle wouldn't put us in the same place, but this did. So within a day, you friends with other hikers. Within 2 days, you're best friends. After that, your family. So I have trail family friends that from all over the world because of this amazing thing that I did. On the end for you guys, but I do finish my hike. The one thing that I got out of it was that it did the way I see humans and the way I interact with people. I've always been a people person, but after this experience, I'm more free. I word love more freely than I used to. I would hang out with my friends when it was normal to hang out with friends. I would hang, and afterwards, it changed. This was going to happen. I didn't know how it was going to, and it wasn't one of those things where it just like the clouds didn't open up and said, Derick Lugo, this is your life. No, it gradually happened, and it was something that I felt inside, held on to afterwards, and then it totally changed the way I can do the rest of my life, my career, and what I did afterwards. It opened a lot of windows for me, and the love of the outdoors. This photo brings that thru-hikers, they think of the way, because there's a lot, you're hiking from whatever time you wake up, 6 in the morning all the way until you get to camp. It could be 5, 6, you go to bed, you eat, go to bed, and you do it. So I always say that the one thing that the Appalachian Trail in my thru-hike gave me was my time, my freedom to think. I was able to complete my thoughts. And that was one of the things that I took from the AT. But you start thinking about, okay.
Looks like we just lost Derick. I'm sure he'll log back in shortly. Just bear with us for one moment if you would. I think that Derick said he was visiting family. So did you get back in, Derick? Are you there? I think I see Derick back on now.
So I guess the energized.
Oh, Derick, are you there? I think we lost you for a minute there.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I think we can hear you and see you now. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that we had some Wi-Fi issues. The 2020 never disappoints, but
Yeah.
I think the sound was much better once your video was off, and so I think we're ready for a good conversation. Let's do this. We've got quite a few people on. Two ideas. One idea is if you would do the following, everybody, is click on the participant window at the bottom, and also click on chat. And so in the participant window, you can click on the raise hand feature. If you would like to raise your hand, then you could go ahead. I can take you off mute and you could ask Derick a question. Or you are welcome to put a question in the chat and I could read it and Derick could answer that way. So feel free to use either one of those. So again, if you click on participant window and the chat window at the bottom, either type in a question in the chat or raise your hand using the participant window, little raise hand feature. And feel free to ask Derick Lugo a question. And while people are collecting their thoughts, I think Phil said that he had a question that he wanted to start off with. Phil, would you like to start off? Oh, I see Linda Jellison. Well, so after Linda, Phil will give this one to Linda. Linda, I'm gonna see if I can unmute you here. Let's see if this works. Are you able to take yourself off mute, Linda?
Yeah.
There you go, go ahead.
Hey, Linda.
Hi, Derick, how are you? I loved that book, Walk in the Woods. I just absolutely loved it. I'm not a through hiker. However, I work at PCT days every summer. Okay. And I absolutely love hiking and wish I had done it when I was younger. My question is this: are you planning to hike? Have you hiked the PCT? And how would you compare that to ACT?
So one of my hiker friends, Shanti, that's in the book, we're playing around with the idea of doing hiking the PCT for our 10-year anniversary of the AT. So we did the AT in 2012. So in 2022, she was 50 when she did the AT, and now she'll be 60. So the one thing I know is that with the AT, I did it by myself and just met people along the way. The one thing I've heard is that it's great to do it with a group, the PCT with a group. I hear it's longer, but the terrain isn't as rough, but the weather could be tricky. So yeah, I would totally do it. I'm gonna continue doing adventures like this and writing about it. Being gone for so long is a little more tricky because I now have a partner, and we have now pets and a family and stuff. So it's a little tricky, but she's very supportive, and if I need to do it, and if I want to do it, then yes. So I'm playing around with it, and 2022 sounds like it would be when we're going to do it. Hopefully by then everything will be cool. But yes, I would love to do it. I'm doing other adventures. I do weekend hikes and day hikes and do shorter hikes. But yeah, I think about the PCT a lot.
Yeah, you have to see it. It's so incredibly beautiful. And PCT Days is an amazing weekend. We love it when the through hikers come through. And so be sure to read Wild, because you'll want to know about Cheryl Strade's experience if you haven't already.
Yes, Wild came out the year that I started my through hike, and I heard about it. But once I decided I was going to write my book, I didn't want to read it because I didn't want it to blend into what I was saying, my story. But yes, you're right. I need to read that.
And so just so everybody knows, PCT, Pacific Crest Trail, right? Okay, just making sure. I'm guessing most people are hikers here, just making sure if we're using the lingo that everybody's able to participate. So we have a question from Deb Hansen in the chat. What were some of the things that you have taken into the rest of your life from your experiences on the trail?
The love of the outdoors, which was something I didn't realize that was there for me. Being out there, I love being out there with the trees. That was something I didn't, I'm surrounded by buildings, but being out there in the trees is totally different. They're alive. And it just made me feel like I was part of something. And I would say, like I said earlier, just freely sharing the word love with other people. So my connection with family and friends are a lot deeper. And also, as soon as I got off the trail, I just couldn't stop sharing it. And I've been doing talks for the last 8 years, and the book came out. So it totally changed everything for me. Like I said, my career had just changed.
I have a private question that was asked, so I'll ask for this person. She writes, what are a few things that can be done to introduce urban people of color to the woods?
I would say, and this is just my opinion, I think it's easier for urban people or people of color to hear it from people that are like them. So my message, my story would sound differently if you shared it, if you shared my story. But if they see someone like me, like if little Derick had a book that looked like the Unlikely Thru-Hiker, the cover, then I could relate more to it. Before COVID, all this happened, I lived in Harlem, and I had a lot of talks lined up at the YMCA and schools and stuff like that. So it was something that I knew would make an impact. So I think having more people of color sharing their experience, because I see a lot of them out there now, is the best way.
So let's see, Emily Wright asks, what inspired you to hike the Appalachian Trail in particular? There are lots of difficult long hikes. What about this particular journey drew you in besides a walk in the woods?
Again, I didn't know any other trails. Like, I just knew about the AT because of the book. So I didn't even know there was a trail that went from New York City to the AT, the Long Path Trail. I knew nothing. So just wanting to be extreme, it was a challenge. And I said, I'm going to do it. Bought the gear, and I was like, yeah, people do this all the time, and just went for it. It never crossed my mind that I should have actually learned how to hike, learned that I can do it or liked it. So it was just a spur in the moment. I'm older now and wiser. I don't think I would have done it like that now. And when people ask me, I've never hiked before, you think I should do it? I'm like, no, first find out if you like hiking, do weekend hikes, and then figure it out then.
Sam Joseph asks, several years ago, there was an Outside Magazine story about a gay Black woman who did the Appalachian Trail. She experienced some life-changing events. He asks, were there any racially charged episodes, particularly when in the South?
No, everything, I didn't have any negative responses. The responses I was getting, because I looked like this on the trail, was, dude, you're out here. Like I was hiking the Smokies, and there was this older guy that was passing me, and he just stopped and said, hey man, the Smokies, there's a bunch of different trails all over the Smokies. And he said, I've been hiking these trails for, I forgot how many years, 17 years, something like that. And you're like the third or fourth Black through hiker I've seen. So people were just being really forward about it, not in a mean way, but just really excited that I was out there. And I took it and was excited for them and was happy that I could be out there. But no, everyone was cool. I felt nothing but love on the trail. I know it's different for other people, but I also am not a defensive person. So I may have been a different person and taken that the wrong way. I'm like, why are you calling me out like that? But I never, because I try to see what they're saying and get their their emotions and their reactions. And that's what I was feeling. So the joy he got from seeing me was the joy I was getting. So I didn't get any negative responses from people.
Jennifer asks, what did you take with you that you found out that you really didn't need? And what didn't you take with you that you found out you really would have liked to have had with you?
I laugh at that question because the Mr. Fabulous, the metrosexual in me decided that he needed an outdoor shower. So I took like one of those bladders that you fill up and you tie it up on a tree, and it has a little knob, and it kind of showers you a little bit. And in the book, I talk about it. And I hung it up on a side of like a mountain with like wet leaves, and I was falling and slipping and hitting my face while I was sliding down. So I decided I used it maybe like twice, maybe 3 times, and it was cold out there. That was one thing I chucked right away. I was like, I don't need that. One thing I wish I had, I think for someone that had never done anything like this, pretty much everything that I had was on point. There wasn't anything that I was in need of. I think I was fine as far as that, but there was a few things. Like at one point I had 5 books in my bag, which, come on, dude, you don't need, get an ebook, like don't do that.
Speaking of pitching, Madison asks whether you experienced trash or littering along the trail, and how did it influence your journey?
Did I experience what?
Trash or littering, or people pitching showers along the side of the trail?
So as far as trash, it's funny because my hiking buddy did this, and I decided to do it as well. I had a bag, like a Ziploc bag, and anytime I saw trash or wrapping or anything like that on a trail, I would pick it up and put it in my trash, because eventually that trash, I would hit a trailhead or something. It would be a wastebasket, and I can just dump it all in there. There wasn't as much trash as you think along the trail, especially when you're away from the towns. Maybe at trailheads, the one thing I would really bother me was when I would see trail magic, and then people would get, they would leave wrappings right there where the trail magic was, like near the cooler or stuff like that. But no, I would actually, my thing was to put it in my Ziploc, because another hiker did it, and I knew a few other hikers that were like that. So, but for the most part, the trail, the AT is pretty clean. The trash, only if you have if you're near the road and you have teenagers and all that, and you see like a bunch of different stuff. That was the only time I saw something. But other than that, the trail was pretty clean. It's just the day hikers or kids that just hang out there that I saw was leaving a mess.
Gotcha. Teddy Joe has an interesting question. And I wonder, Teddy Joe, would you be interested in, I'm going to invite you to unmute yourself. If you want to take yourself off mute and even put your video on, you could ask your question there about the PCT if you would like, or I can read it for you if you don't take yourself off mute.
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Yes.
So I don't remember exactly what I typed, but it's something to the extent of, as I prepare for my own PCT through hike, I'm going alone. And I find in conversations, mostly with strangers, a lot of pushback on why would a woman do such a thing alone? And so I was just wondering if you had any specific advice on how to best handle those conversations.
I would throw at them amazing female hikers that I look up to. Jennifer Farr Davis, who at one point was the fastest person to hike the AT. I moved to Asheville, so she lives here now. She's an amazing hiker, and she does it by herself. You have Anish, who has been breaking records, broke the record for the fastest PCT hike. Her name is Anderson. I think it's Heather Anderson, but her trail name is Anish. I would just research all these amazing women that they influence me. Like I see them, I'm like, wow. I would just throw out those names and say, look, I'm not the first person to do it. I told that to my brother. He was like, dude, you don't know what you're getting into. I'm like, this is not an undiscovered country. The trail, a lot of people do the trail. So I would do that. I don't know exactly. I mean, you're not going to change anyone's mind. Okay. if you're gonna do it and you want to do it and prove them wrong. I did that to my family and my brother, and he was like, whoa, you did it. So the best way to answer that is just to do it.
Sorry.
Thanks, Teddy Joe. Good luck.
Yes, good luck.
Let's see. Have you always been an author storyteller, and what inspired you to write a book about the journey?
Good question. I've been a reader forever since I was, well, not in high school, but when I was a teenager, I fell in love with reading. And then I fell in love with storytelling. I could sit down and listen to an older person talk about stories for hours. And I decided I want to be like that. When I'm old, I want to be that old dude that has stories. And in order to have stories, I need to experience life a little bit. So I've been writing since I was a teenager. I've had journals. I took a journal with me along the way. I've written short stories, manuscripts, poems, but nothing like this. When I got off the trail, I knew it was something I wanted to write about. Halfway through my hike, hikers were telling me that I needed to share my story because I kept sharing that I had no experience, and they would look at me and they saw I love talking about the AT. I could talk hours about hiking in the outdoors, and I had a voice. And when I got off the trail, the first thing I did was there was a lot of hiking trail organizations that would send me out to do talks. And I would do a bunch of talks, and eventually I found out I was writing about the AT, my journey, and I had a voice, and I said, hey man, let's get this guy published. So I've always loved to read and write, but this was the first time where I knew I had a message and a story to share, and I was very confident to share it.
I think Phil posted this earlier, but if someone wanted to get the book, Phil, would you be able to post that link again to the chat? I think we had a 10% discount and a way to get a signed book. And so take a look at the chat. Phil will post that information again. I'm going to invite Susan Fernig. Susan, if you want to take yourself off mute and you could turn your video on if you're able and willing, feel free if you'd like to ask your question to Derick.
Sure.
Hi, Susan.
Hey, Derick. I'm a section hiker and of the Pacific Crest Trail. And as you probably know, we section hikers look at you through hikers like this. Oh my gosh, you guys are so amazing. I did my first section hiking, finished Washington back in the late 1970s, took a couple decades off, and I've finished Oregon and most of California. So I've done 1,900 miles. I have 750 left to go. Very slow process. Okay. But my question for you in particular has to do with how you view section hikers. A number of through hikers seem to not want to hang around with us. I was privileged to hike with a group of through hikers for a couple weeks from the Mexican border, and they've become dear friends. But other through hikers are like, oh, you're a section hiker? Forget that. I mean, so I just wondered what your experience was.
I've never seen that. I love section hikers. I love anyone that's out there. It's not about doing the entire trail in one season or one calendar year. It's about getting out there. And that's what my book is about. It's sharing something, like hopefully inspiring people to step out of their comfort zone and to do something amazing or live their dream. So you going out there, I mean, you said you were doing it in the 70s. That's a different hike. And I love that. I have a friend that was telling me he hiked it in 70s something. And I was listening to him for hours sharing that story. So you have a story in itself. So my experience is in the hikers that I know, if you're a hiker, you're a hiker. And we love that. I've hung out with weekend hikers when I was through hiking, and we're still friends. In fact, they're in my book. So I love all hikers. So you're good. And you're doing an amazing job. That's awesome.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. Somebody wrote a direct message question. They invite you to tell us about any wildlife encounters that you might have had. I don't know. Did you have any wildlife stories?
It's in the book. It's in the book, but yes. I'll tell you one. There was a few stories. There was one experience where it was already a miserable day, and it was raining, and I was going up and down these rock ridges, and I was sliding down, like I was landing on my butt and just sliding all the way down. I was miserable. And at one point, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is going to go on for a while. So I'm going up and down. I go up this rock ridge, not realizing it went down instead of up. So I go up, go down, and I'm surrounded. By then, it kind of stopped raining a little bit. It was just drizzling. And I realized that I don't see a trail because there's like a big tree that fell, and I didn't want to go over it. I'm surrounded by trees, no trail. So I backtrack. And when I backtrack on the top of that ridge, there's a bear just sitting with his eyes closed next to this big boulder, just chewing on grub. And I had an experience before that. I knew that I shouldn't sneak up on bears because they don't like that. That's a lesson. Do not sneak up on bears when they're eating. So I backed up, and then I started. This is what people were telling me. They said, make a lot of noise. I had trekking poles. Make a lot of noise with your trekking poles, and they'll run off. So I made noise, and I was like, okay, I got this. I go back up, and he's even closer. I'm like, oh man, that's some crazy advice. So I back up, I kept backing up, but he was curious. He kept moving slowly. He wasn't in a hurry to murder me or anything. He was just kind of curious, just moving a little bit closer and closer. And I'm backing up, and I'm scared, and I fall over the tree. At one point, I'm thinking I think I'm gonna take my pack off and just storm off. And I decided not to because I had just resupplied, and my through hike would have been over if I let the bear have all that. So I kept going, and luckily the trail wrapped around, and I got back on the trail and I should have kept going, but what I decided, and I don't consider myself a purist, but I decided to backtrack and go back what I missed. And when I did that, the bear was just looking down at me, and he just walked up to me. So he was even closer when I got to the top. And at that point I said, if he kills me, I deserve it, because I could have just been scot-free. So luckily I went back. He's just looking at me curious, like, this dude is a knucklehead, and kept going. So that was one. Another time I got chased by one. Another time I was at a water source, and it was a bear, and he saw me, and I got spooked, and I ran. You're not supposed to run, but the heck with that. I was gone. I lucked out because I think the one time the bear started to chase me, I think it was a bluff charge. And because I told a friend, and he was like, dude, there's no way you're going to outrun a bear. So that must have been what happened. So there was a few times. And I tell my friend, other hikers, they say, hey man, just make a lot of noise. They just run off. I said, dude, they don't do that to me. And my friend Shanti was like, they must be your spirit guide or animal. What is it? Your animal spirit or whatever it's called. And I'm like, no, I'd rather not. I'd rather have a chipmunk or something be my animal, whatever.
That's great. I see we've got quite a few students here, but I don't think we've had too many questions from them. So I'm going to just provoke some of my environmental studies students here. I'm going to take one more question from the chat, but all of you be thinking, I will like cold call on one of you. You know I will. So just because I can. But we have a question from Tegan. How have your ideas about nature changed since before you hiked the Appalachian Trail to now, if at all? How have your ideas about nature changed or not?
No, it changed a lot. Remember the woods and nature and going out there was a little scary. I've never camped out before, never pitched a tent. So knowing that that's something I can do, that's an activity I can do, and now I love it. And I'm surrounded by mountains now, so I hike nonstop. Yeah, I went from before I thru hike, I was very active and I would run, but now my activity is hiking. So yeah, it changed drastically. My love of being out there, where there was no love for it, and now there is. So yeah, I love hiking.
Some of my colleagues use the book Last Child in the Woods, which talks about this idea of nature deficit disorder. I don't know if you ever have heard this this idea, but that young people don't have access or don't get access enough to nature, and that this has a negative effect on us psychologically. Would you agree with this idea?
I agree. I agree. There was, I think my mom was telling me that in the 70s, there was they would have programs where they would take like kids from like poor neighborhoods and take them out to go camping and hiking and stuff like that. But I've never seen, I wish there was something like that. And then one of the things I do now is I go to school, well, not currently now, but last year when my book first came out, I would go to schools and do talks, go to libraries and do talks, because it needs to be taught. It needs to be, I wish it was a subject. I wish it was like a field trip or something you can do. But yes, I wish there was more of that. Yeah, kids need to learn. There's a quote that I was going to end my talk with, and it goes, that I love. It's not my quote, but I've seen it somewhere. If you want to sound smart, go to school. If you want to be wise, go to nature. That says it all.
Chris asks, any advice to keep an optimistic mindset on the trail, or a trail similar to the one that you did for young kids, to keep an optimistic mindset?
For young kids.
Yeah.
What I would do is I would share your love of, like, you can't force a kid to love something. But I realize, and I've heard from like parents and stuff, that kids seem to like things that you like, not things that you force them to like. So if you share your experience with them and tell them how amazing it is, they're gonna walk into that going, hey, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be fun. It's the reason why in my book, I kept it positive, because unlike the walk in the woods, where his reaction to the AT was not very positive. And that's one of the things that a lot of thru-hikers complain about the book. They love it, they think it's funny, but the one complaint was that it wasn't positive, and about the trail and hiking and all that. And I'm not going to inspire anyone if my book was all about how hard the AT was. So I would say just share the love that you have or your experience with the youngins. And when you take them out there, show them that, you know, how amazing it is, all the little things. I hiked with a bunch of kids, and the guy that was leading us would stop and talk about a plant, but not to the point where the kids were getting reckless, you know, like they were getting antsy. He would just watch them and just keep on going. With kids also, you have to dictate how far you can take them, because they get tired. You don't want to end up carrying kids back to the trailhead. So that's my advice, just to show them how much you love it.
That's awesome. One idea that occurs to me, maybe now would be a good time, Phil, or I don't know if we have someone from the Washington Trails Association, but it occurs to me that we might be able to make this more local, to give people who are here in and around Spokane, who might want to get out into nature and experience trails in our area. If there's a representative from the Washington Trails Association, I'll let Phil start. Does anybody have advice to people who want to get either more outdoors or to start getting outdoors, to be inspired by Derick's talk tonight?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off there, Brian. The Friends of Scotch and Peaks, as probably many people on the Zoom call will know, have an area up here just north and east of Sandpoint that's really special to a lot of folks, the Scotch and Peaks. We have a website, scotchandpeaks.org, in which we list our most popular hikes. We also have a downloadable version of a map. We have a print version of the map available. It looks like this throughout our region. And we offer guided hikes, or volunteer-led hikes, I should say, in both winter and summer. We're working right now on our winter schedule. We're going to include a number of naturalist-led field trip type of hikes, but you can certainly go on your own. Again, great information on our website or via the map. Wonderful place year-round: cross-country skiing, snowshoeing in the winter, hiking in the summer. Wear hunter orange in the fall. And I think there was Holly Wheeler, I think, was one of the participants from Washington Trails Association. Perhaps if Holly could come on.
Let's see, I might have to invite her. Let's see, I'll invite her to unmute. Holly, are you able to?
Yes, I think everyone can hear me. Yeah. So thank you so much for your presentation, Derick. That was fantastic. And yeah, I am the Eastern Washington Regional Coordinator for Washington Trails Association. So we're a statewide nonprofit organization for those of you all across the state of Washington. And then we do a lot of work on some of our local trails in Spokane County parks, Washington State parks, Colville National Forest. And for folks who are interested in learning more about trails that are available close to the Spokane area and within Eastern Washington, we also have a website. It's WTA.org. There's a hiking guide, which is a little bit like an online guidebook. And then there are trip reports where folks go for a hike and share information about what they experienced with the local outdoor community. It's a really great way to learn about current conditions on trail, see some photographs of trails, what they look like before you even go. And in the event anyone is interested, I'm actually doing a local snowshoe presentation for Spokane Public Libraries tomorrow night. So that information is available on the Spokane Public Libraries website, but very similar to this format and really focusing on snowshoe trails in the inland Northwest region. But yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share. And I guess the other thing that WTA does a lot of locally is volunteer trail maintenance. And so I don't lead hikes for WTA, but I do put a tool in folks' hands and teach them how to use it to build the trails that our land managers have added to their trail system. So we're currently working on a brand new trail in Antoine Peak Conservation Area. And we have some work parties that may or may not be snowed upon through the end of this month and into early December. So I encourage anyone to get involved with volunteering and look up opportunities both with WTA and with other organizations. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. That was really useful. Lots of good advice in the chat, everybody. If you want some good advice, we've got some. Make sure to check out all of those. If you are somebody here who would like to share a little bit more, please just put in the chat or raise your hand, and I'd be happy to take you off mute. Okay. Excellent. Well, Derick, I think this has been a wonderful talk. Thanks for your patience with the technology issues. It's been a delight to get to meet you.
It was great. Thank you for having me. I think it may have been on my end with the internet, but I'm glad we were able to work it out somehow. So, but thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so excited to be able to have you here. We had about 105 people at our high water mark, which is fantastic. So obviously a lot of people are inspired by your story, and anything that gets people out and enjoying nature is fantastic. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You also make me miss New York too. You so there's a little bit of
not at this time though. Not at this time.
Well, no. Thanks again for everybody being here tonight, and please check out gonzaga.edu/ENVS events. We have another talk on Wednesday at noon. Dr. Hugh Lefcourt will be presenting a talk on his experience as a reviewer for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change at noon. Again, that's gonzaga.edu/ENVS events, environmental studies events. You can find out more, and we'll look forward to seeing you at future events. Thanks again, everybody. Good night.